Hello YouTube and welcome back. Right now I'm working on the other patch panel for one of the layers inside of the frame rail. As you can see right here, this is the area that still needs to be shaped and pulled up. Now I am still trimming and shaping it, and it will look a little rough until it's done being shaped to the exact shape it needs, and that way the edges match up. I'm going to use my die grinder. As you can see, there's a little bit of unevenness right here. Take your Sharpie and then you'll be able to know what you have to use your cutout wheel or your die grinder. That way you can get a nice and clean overlay and clean it up so you have a perfect butt splice and put those two together and weld them into a strong structural piece of metal. At this point, you're going to want to protect any piece of clothing or part of your body that you do not want anything to land on. Get yourself nice and covered up. And as I'm in a pretty much a tight area, I work with what I can do and get it nice and lined up. I like to use my screwdriver if I have to bend or pry something into a smaller area and, curve it over. As you see, I'm just tapping it down, getting it nice and lined up as I'm doing my spot welding. As you know, you can't do a solid line when you're welding in new panels, especially in areas like this. So don't look for perfectly aesthetic welds in this scenario. Look for structural welds that go through 100% with perfect penetration. I'm using flux core on this weld. As it's not as pretty as MIG or TIG, it still provides a very structurally strong weld, and it will make sure that I get this repair done the way that I need to with keeping the budget down. As shielding gas and using anything else like that is also a pro, it's also a con when it comes to your budget, especially when you're trying to keep the budget down. Now, remember, if you're new to this channel, remember to like and subscribe if you like seeing this type of stuff. I like to guide anyone through how I like to repair or do things, or I've learned through my hard lessons on what I've done to repair things. Now, if you see something that you would like to do differently, you do not have to replicate me to the T, or if you do like what you see, feel free to replicate it and achieve what you're looking to achieve. Now, right now, I'm just trying to show you how I repaired the lower rear end section of my 2006 Dodge Charger. Now, this is a very common rot out area on these type of cars. This is an LX platform, which is shared with the 300, Magnum, and also the Charger. Now, as you can see here, I'm lining up the newer bottom piece. It does have a little bit of extra overlay, and I still need to fabricate the outer part. This is one of the final parts of this welding. There's probably about 4 or 5 inner parts that you have to repair first before you get to this last inner part. As you can see here, I'm just doing a few occasional spot welds along the lines of where the outer side is, where I need to pin it down, make sure all the corners are pinned, so as you're welding it doesn't lose the shape that it needs to stay in. Because you're going to be doing a bunch of spot welds occasionally over and over again until you achieve a perfect line straight all the way down where the two metal have to be welded together. Alright, as you can see here, I'm working on my last patch that has to be made so that I can finally be done with this side of the lower frame rails on this Dodge Charger. And I can finally move over to the other side that's on the passenger side. Now I gotta trim it using my Sharpie to see where the edge is. And that's where I'm going to pretty much do my cut, bring it over to my sheet metal, cut it with 18 gauge steel, or if not 16, but I'm going to do 18, and this will be our final patch. Now on this last patch that I'm working on, I added a bend that will allow it to connect onto the floor pan area, just like the original. This way, the patch will allow any sort of weight transfer to happen to the floor pan area, just like the original rails did. This allows me to keep the original strength that I'm looking for, plus it's still welding onto original rails that are still there, which is still structurally strong, and now I'm patching the area that rotted out to allow the new metal to patch to the good metal that's still left after I cut away anything that was rotten and made sure I repaired and allowed that the area has a strong area for the patch and repair to stick to. Now, if you're interested in the process and how I did that, you can check in the other videos of the before process, and that'll help you guide you through what you need to do to make sure you're rust-proof and protected. And this area right there, as you can see, is all ready to be patched without worrying that it's going to spread again. Take your time. I keep playing around with the fitment as I'm trying to match the original contortion and bends of the original metal that is now gone because of the foam that was sprayed inside of the lower rails and the rocker panels. Alright guys, this is near my favorite part, when you finally can see everything almost fully patched up and you're finally at the end of the tunnel almost. As you can see, I'm laying down my first initial spot welds, and this will hold everything in place as I'm getting everything all mocked up and ready to go. Now you can go for a complete butt splice on these panels in this area, or a slight overlay, depending on what you're looking for. For me, I did a butt splice on the bottom where the new two patches are going to be lining up. Then I did a overlay on the frame rail on the top section and on the area where the floorboards match up, because that's originally a spot weld location that's drilled through and only welded in 2 or 3 locations and not welded fully around, but I'm going to be doing a full weld around, and that way it gets a more adequate welding job with the patch, and then I'm going to be doing the same all the way around and making sure after a bunch of spot welds everything is uniform and solid in one line. Now, after each spot weld, I pretty much lift my helmet up and take a look and see how things are going. If you see anything that needs to be pressed over, you can use the edge of a flathead screwdriver to help get you nice and even there if you have to push something over or hold it down. Remember to take your time and step away from the panels every once in a while to give your project time to cool down. You can even spray some air at it from your air compressor, or put some ice in a bag and hold it on the panel, which that will melt, but that'll help cool the panel down and keep it from warping. Now, I'm not worried about where I'm welding with attaching the new metal causing a fire at this point anymore, because I've removed all the foam that you saw inside those rockers. Now, if you didn't do that, you would have already had a fire from these spot welds. So I really do recommend that you take out that foam and make sure that your car is safe with the welding. Now, if the metal needs a little bit of play, you can use your hammer and that'll scoot over the metal just enough to make sure it's nice and flat again for your spot welds. As you can see here, I'm checking out the edge right here to make sure that everything is laid out nice and flat. I'm giving it a nice little tap with my hammer, make sure everything is extra flat and lined up so that when I do my spot welds, everything is actually lined up without that much of a gap. That way it can do what it needs to do and cause a uniform structural spot weld. Now, since I'm using flux core, I do know that my spot welds do not look the prettiest right at this very moment. However, that is not what I'm worried about. What I'm doing here is I'm going for a longer period of time on my spot weld. That way I have enough heat and penetration to know that this is going through and I'm going to have a structural strong welding. What I do is I wait till it gets cherry red, and then I let it cool down, and I wait, and then I do the next spot weld. Now, this video is almost over. I will be concluding at this point with this part of the video series on how to repair these frame rails on this LX platform car. The next part will be uploaded when I'm actually working on the other side of the frame rails. I'm going to be making sure to upload that video within the next week or two. We've had a huge heat wave, almost 103 degrees in the sunlight at this point where I am living. So I'm not doing too much work outside with my garage as it's not AC cooled, and I do have to have the door open, especially with welding, to get correct ventilation. Alright guys, remember to like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next videos. I hope this helped you out, and if you're interested, you can try it on your vehicle to save your car too.